This is the Today with Tally podcast. And with that, we are honored to be joined by Gold Star father and the author of Fishing with Joey, Tom Logan. How are you, sir?
I'm great today. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Look, I got an email from you a while back, and I read through it, and I was heartbroken. I can literally pinpoint me as a child and all of these areas that you were talking about in this email. And we're going to get further into this email. Yeah. That's what jumped out at me was the nature, the fishing, the hunting, the road trips, the great outdoors. Yeah. And as I got further into this email, I started to depict certain things out of it as if perhaps God knew what could be coming down range for you as a father and wanted you to spend some quality time with your son, Joey. And that's exactly what happened. But before we get into that, you are no stranger to public service yourself. You were a weapons instructor during the Vietnam War era. Yeah. And then you get out and a lifetime of service with Houston PD for 28 years. Tell me a little bit about police career.
Yeah. But when I enlisted in the Air Force, Vietnam was going full bore, full tilt. And I got my draft notice. Draft notice number 13. So I'm thinking number 13 is not a lucky number. And so I beat feet and ran down to the Air Force and enlisted. And they said, what do you want to do? I said, I like to shoot guns. So I'm like, well, here's a career field for you. And they put me in the marksmanship career field, and with the training and stuff, I taught. It's just unbelievable amount of shooters. Because, like I said, I think 1 year, Air Force wide, we trained over 124,000 shooters. And wow. They were deployed all over the world. So I probably heard 1 million rounds go off. And I'm a disabled veteran from that. I can't hear, and I got tinnitus and everything else. But yeah, so. But it was the best time of my life because you're young, you don't care, you have a good time, you got a job you love, and then I actually met my wife there on a blind date, Debbie. So it was pretty crazy. She was in nursing, and her roommate had 2 dates, and she said, "Will you take this loser off my hand?" So I ended up with Debbie.
So what are the odds? You join the Air Force, and they're like, yeah, just throw the Texan over there, and the Texan will teach everybody else how to shoot, right? Texas guns kind of goes hand in hand like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, huh?
Yeah. And it was pretty, it was a lot of training, because I was at, I never deployed because I was a training instructor. So we were at Lackland Air Force Base, Medina Air Force Base, at Campbell, because Campbell, we had the M60 machine gun program up there too. So all the Air Force security and police and law enforcement had to qualify with all that stuff. So we heard a lot of bang going on. I'll tell you that for sure.
And Debbie never left, right?
No, Debbie was assigned to Wilford Hall, the hospital up there.
No, I'm saying she never left. Like once you met her, hey, didn't you guys have a couple kids? I mean, you went
5 kids. When she met me, she didn't like me anyway. She still doesn't, but she loves me.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And she never left, right?
Yeah, we've been married 48 years, so it's been a romance and a roller coaster like any marriage. Yeah,
love it. Yeah, that's just a little bit of my my facetiousness there. I was like, well, you met Debbie and she never left, and and you guys
times, but she didn't. I guess she saw something in me was good, and the rest of it was like, oh well, dealt with it.
Love it, man. Love it. So you guys would go on to raise 5 children.
Yeah. They're the oldest one's 45 years old now.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa, Dad.
I'll be 72 this year.
Dad?
Yeah.
Man, you could be my dad.
Yeah, that's why.
And I'm okay. How could you be I'm more gray than you are.
It's genetics, man, because I'm half Italian, half Russian, so I don't know what you want to put together with that, but
yeah, I've got look, I'm Italian, I'm Irish, I'm Czech.
Yeah.
We probably got a lot of the same.
We're probably related way back in the woodpile somewhere. You never know.
Yeah. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Tom, got to get to the meat and potatoes here, man, and it's hard to talk about, and but that's life is full of surprises. You know, it's the ups, the downs, the ebb and flow of life. But you received a phone call. Your life forever changed on January the 18th of 2012.
Yeah.
Joey, your son, a US Marine, was involved in a tragic helicopter crash that would take his life. And that's when your life forever changed.
Yeah.
I want you to take us to that moment when you heard about this news, and what were the developments later after this all began to unfold?
The unbelievable part of that is we had just talked to him that morning. He called us from Afghanistan, and he says, I got 28 days left in country. I'm coming home. I'm going to, come home on leave. I'm going to take your truck, and I'm going to drive and go see every living relative we have. I said, Joe, that's impossible. No, I'm going to do it. Hard-headed, he had something stuck in his head. And would you believe that every living relative that we had came to his funeral? How's that happen?
So he said, hey, Dad, I want to go, when I get home on leave, I want to go visit every single one of my living relatives.
Yeah. And they came to visit him after he passed at his funeral.
Had he ever met them before? Or?
Yeah, he knew who most of them were. And they were from like babies to grandparents. And it was like, and I'm looking around. And I'm like, what is going on here? And this has been going on, since he passed. I mean, I call them miracles. I mean, there's no other way to call it what it is. But it's an amazing journey. It's depicted in the book too. It's a roller coaster of emotions and certain things that happen that shouldn't happen, but they do. And I actually got witnesses to it, which is the best thing part of it, because it's not crazy Tom thinking I just saw something or I heard something, or this just happened.
I sit down with so many Gold Star family members, and getting those like final phone calls when you don't know they're final when they're coming in, of course, but once they say, the last time I spoke to him or her, and then they'll say, he said this or that, and it's almost as if like they knew that their own death was coming in a roundabout way, which is crazy. I mean, when was the last time he said, hey, I want to go visit every single one of my living relatives?
Probably never.
Right. And then all of a sudden he says this, and he's only 20 some days before he gets home on leave. Right.
Yeah, he's on a downhill slide. Matter of fact, the month before the fatal crash, they were flying a mission and they put a bird down hard, and they crushed all the landing gear, and he walked away from that without getting hurt. And he called me all depressed one day. I said, from Afghanistan. He said, Dad, I said, what's the matter? Because you could tell his voice. He says, we're grounded. I'm like, for what? Are you hurt? You shot? No, I'm okay. We just put a bird down hard, and we're grounded until they can finish the investigation. I see it was pilot error or fatigue in the helicopter. And he found out it was a fatigue in the helicopter. The chassis of the helicopter was a Vietnam vintage machine. Be built and rebuilt and built and rebuilt and ready to put together, And the one he crashed in was a Vietnam chassis too.
Unreal.
Yeah. So
unreal.
You're talking about 50 years, 40, 50 years working the same machine. So go figure from there,
And so, of course, the pilot brought it down hard, knocked out the landing gear, but that was just the first of what would be leading into a catastrophic incident. On January the 18th in 2012, Afghanistan. When Joey's helicopter crashed, how many other Marines were on board?
There were a total of 6, 2 officers, pilot and co-pilot, and then the crew members. And that was Joey, Daniel Barter was captain, Nathan McCone was co-pilot, Travis Riddick was master sergeant, Jesse Sipes, and Kevin Reinhardt. And they were they're supposedly flying a resupply mission, just to go out to that fob, dump out, dump, because the Marines that out the fob were running out of food and water. They were down to bare minimum, and they couldn't come back in because like the IEDs on the roads and stuff, and the Taliban over there just doing what they're doing. And so Joey, he wasn't even supposed to fly. Him and Kevin weren't going to fly that night, but he liked to fly so much that he said, well, I'll take your spot. Kevin said the same thing. I'll take your spot because it's a routine flight. Just fly out, come back. That was the second flight that night. They went out, resupplied another group, come back, re-rigged, and went back out and tried to supply these other guys, you know. And
it was extremely honorable that, you know, I asked about the incident and about the KIA, and you did not hesitate to say the other names, the other 5 names, as if they were your own children.
They are. I mean, they're all our kids' age. I mean,
right.
20, I think pilot was 27, 25, 26-year-olds. Joey's the youngest, 22. So they're kids fighting a war, you know.
Sure, but that's honorable to know their names that. Have you kept in contact with these other KIA parents?
Yeah, on and off randomly. Yeah, but it's hard because you get talking to them, and you know, depends what kind of frame of mind, what mood they're in. You know, it's a hard thing to do, and you know, and some of them are angry still. Some of them can't still believe it. They're all different. They're all different stages of still grief, I guess, because that grief never goes away. You know, it's always there.
They all have one thing in common with you, and they all have a fallen Marine.
Yeah.
And you're right. If that conversation were to happen, really the commonality there between you and them is the death of Joey and the death of their son.
Yeah.
And the only thing to talk about would be the negative, right? And the you know, the hate, the anger, the grief.
Yeah.
And that does really nothing for you except for keep you down. And then before you know it, folks are in a downward spiral, you know, anxiety, depression, you know, fear, in all this that just it doesn't need to happen. It would be considered to be unnecessary by putting yourself in that position. But a lot of Gold Star family members like to be around those other people because it's like their last moments were with their kids, and like they feel that there's this connectivity there that is rather unusual. But again, it's very sad. It's very you know, it's like driving a stake right through your heart and in your gut, and it's like, how do you ever get rid of that feeling?
Yeah, well, we did pretty much the opposite of that. Because, you know, I did 28 years on the PD. Debbie did 21 years. We were both military, so we were sort of pretty callous to a lot of stuff, seeing it every day in and out, and so, you know. And then when Joey said he wanted to build cabins in Montana, the light went on with Debbie. She says, "Hey, we got to do this stuff to honor him, his fallen Marines and stuff, and help the ones that come back." And that's our main goal, is to get those guys up there and let them enjoy the wilderness and relax. And the cabins are really nice. They're like they're almost 900 square foot little houses, so they're fully accommodated. You know, beds and kitchen and hot and cold showers and stuff. The only drawback is you got to use the outhouse. You know,
that's perfect. Yeah, we're going to get right into that, but now I want to talk about some of the beautiful parts and the events and the moments that you shared with your son Joey upon his enlistment before leaving for boot camp. You guys went on a 16,000-mile trek across the country. And you went fishing, you went hunting. I mean, you guys were out there, father and son, living in this time in a bottle, if you will. And
it was a dream. It was like, this is not real, you know?
Yeah. Explain that.
Well, the whole thing started because I was fixing to retire. I had 28 years with the PD, and I'm like, I had enough. I went into work one day and told my supervisor lieutenant, I'm like, I'm done. What do you mean you're done? I'm like, I'm retiring today. So a day and a half later, I was retired and home. I'm like, yes, this is good. Didn't have to deal with anybody anymore. And I told my wife, I'm going to go fishing the first full year after I retire. So she says, go. You're a fishaholic anyway. All you do is go fishing all the time. But he says, you're taking him with you, meaning Joey. And prior to that, earlier that year, he was horsing around with a couple of his friends at a party and fell on a piece of glass and severed the tendons, the artery, the nerves in his left hand. And it fell on a piece of glass. And he calls me like 2 a.m. Dad, I cut my hand real bad and blood squirting on my wrist. So he severed the artery. So I told him, hey, get a tourniquet on there. Have your friends rush you to the emergency room because I can't get to you on time. So we end up going to the hospital, meeting them there, and they had stopped the bleeding, and everything else. And the doctor pulled the bandage and gauze off, and it was horrendous. I mean, the cut was just terrible. And I'm like, well, and he was already pre-enlisted in the Corps. And he's like, his whole dream just went down the chute because he couldn't. That hand was going to be probably paralyzed. He'd never use it again, pretty crippled. And that was the first part of a miracle because they sent him to the trauma center in Houston at Ben Taub, and 4:00 in the morning, there is a microsurgeon on call that puts his hand back together. The nerves, the ligaments, the tendons, and the artery. And I'm like, and 8 hours later, they put it all back together. I'm like, this is unbelievable. And my wife and I says, we need to find a doctor and say, thank you. Please, thank you, because it was pretty emotional. And there was no paperwork or signature on who the surgeon was. And we kept checking, kept calling, and checking and calling. There's no documentation on who this doctor was. So to me, it was an angel who put his hand back together. It's just unbelievable because on that kind of surgery with that kind of intensity and that the operation he did, there's got to be a paper trail to him. To this date, there's none, and we're talking 13 years later. And I'm like, so. When
did that happen? Did that happen like right before you guys went on your 16,000-mile trek?
Yeah,
or
well, he did it. God, it was. I think back because it was. We didn't leave to go on the fishing trip to the end of May, June. So we're talking about 6 months prior to that is when he cut his hand.
So did you guys go on the trip in 2011?
This is 2008. Yeah.
Oh, so he was nearing the end of his full 4 years in the Marine Corps.
Well, no, he was just graduating from high school.
No, what I'm saying, when his chopper went down.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you guys went out in 2008, and that was right before he went to boot camp.
Yeah.
So he was almost done with his enlistment.
Yeah. He was talking about re-enlisting, but I don't know if he was because they put him up for I guess an MOS at flying in Marine One.
Oh, so, wow. Yeah, that's definitely something that you would want to re-enlist for.
Yeah. And matter of fact, his good friend that he swapped with, Ethan Stokel, that night, actually took that slot, and he flew Marine One with Trump. That his first Trump's first term there, and on a sequence of events when Trump was campaigning, Trump was in Billings, Montana, and Ethan and Javon, another Marine, called me from Billings. They said, "We're in Montana. We're going to come up and see you." I'm like, "You're lying." You know how that gets. I said, "There's no way." No. He said, "We're with Trump. We got Marine One with us. That they fold it up, move it around, and everything, and transport it." And she said, "We'll be up tomorrow." I'm like, "Well, give them directions." They showed up, and we had a great time because Ethan sort of had that survivor's guilt because he should have flew that night, and it was rough on him. But we enjoyed each other, and they stayed a day and a half. And Javon, his name is Klinkenberg. That's a big, long German name. He gave me his Marine One flight helmet with the patch and everything on it. So that is off the chart. And then I've got his other helmet, a new helmet that Mitch Green, that was Joey Sergeant Major, gave it to me in K-Bay in Hawaii. I said, because Mitch come up to me after one of the ceremonies, says, "If there's anything I can do for you, let me know." I said, "Well, Mitch, I want a helmet." Okay, so he's sent me over the hangar. One of the sergeants gave me a brand new helmet, all camoed out with all the gear on. I'm like, "Well, thank you very much." I'm like, I didn't expect it, but so I got two helmets, and they're real special. Yeah,
beautiful keepsakes for you.
Yeah, and right now we're upstairs in my office, which I call the war room, because it's got everything from my grandfather in World War I. He went to the trench wars over there, all the way through every conflict that our country's ever been in. He was in World War I. My grandpa Chochi. my dad's and all his brothers and uncles were World War II. Another my uncle was in Korea. Debbie and I are Vietnam era veterans, and 3 of our kids are Gulf War veterans. Andy, Tommy, and Joey. Tommy's still in the Navy. I think he's an E8 now, senior chief, and he's working on retiring. So we've been busy, and
a family that has been dedicated to service from day one, for generations.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about Patriot Homes right here in the greater Houston metropolitan area, folks. These guys are out doing the hard work. It's kind of hard to please people in today's world, but let me tell you, Cody Dawson and his family business stand behind everything they do.
Custom kitchens, bathrooms, master bathrooms, whole home renovations, outdoor patios, home additions, outdoor kitchens.
They are your one-stop shop for everything that you want to do in your home. It's always nice to know that you got somebody that can come in and give you a great price. And not only give you a great price, but be on time, on budget, reliable. All you got to do is just go to patriothomestx.com. That's patriothomestx.com. They're building your vision with pride and precision.
I've even got my Grandpa Chochi's discharge papers from World War I. My mother sent me a copy of it. And you start looking up the battles and the trenches they were in. It's like, oh my.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Unbelievable what those guys went through. And that's where I learned to fish. My grandpa used to love fishing. He'd take me fishing all the time. And
love it.
We named Joey after Joey because my grandpa's first name was Giuseppe, so that's Joseph in English. And Daniel is his middle name, and Logan's the last name. But, so he's got a little heritage just with his name, the kid. He had to live up to it because I told him about Grandpa Chochi and all the other veterans in our family.
Mm-hmm.
And, he said, "Well, I'm going to court." I'm like, "You crazy? I'm going anyway. I'm going." The war's going on. He knew what he was getting into.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's the thing, it's, you know what you're signing up for. And a lot of the times they're just raising their hands. Yeah, I want to go on this mission. I want to go on that. Yeah. I'd rather go do that than just sit back here in the rear and do nothing. I want to go out and I want to see some action, So a lot of these times folks like your son weren't supposed to be where they were at, but they raised their hand in defense of this nation. And again, that just speaks to your character.
And just on that deployment.
Yeah, you raised this young man to do just that.
You don't realize that your kids are watching you their whole life, and they emulate what you do. And it's like, and then he does this. I'm like, wow. And he did things in 22 years I would never have done ever. From skydiving, jumping off cliffs into pools of water, hog hunting with a spear. I mean, the kid was that A personality. He's like, "What are you going to do next?" I'm like, "Whoa." And he called me. Guess what I just did? I was on the phone, and just in that deployment alone, he flew 42 combat missions. So he earned 2 combat air wings medals, and the second one, the commanding general pinned his medal on him. And one of the Marines that Ricky Combs said that he had a smile from ear to ear. He just was beaming with pride, And,
wow. 42. So your son flew in 42 combat missions.
Yeah.
Did they ever figure out like what the reason was when his helicopter crashed? Was it shot down? Was it depth perception?
There's a lot of speculations, and it's to me it's still up in the air because Joey would tell me every time we fly out, as soon as we cross the wire, we fly out, we're getting shot at by ground fire, small arms and RPGs and everything else. Mm-hmm. And they come back with a helicopter full of bullet holes, and they always talk about the golden bullet. The right bullet in the right place will bring that helicopter down as big as it was. It's like, was it 84 feet long? And, there's 2 engines on it, and it was huge. You've seen 53s.
Oh yeah. I used to fly in them.
They're huge. And, so, and there was two birds went out that night. I called the sister bird. And, we end up talking to that crew afterwards at a meeting, and they said something flashed and the helicopter started coming out of the sky. So what's the flash?
I mean, yeah, this is very reminiscent of Extortion 17, when Extortion 17 went down. And then, like you said, the Golden Bullet. Well, we all know that these, Super Stallions, Blackhawks, the Air Coffins, the CH-46s, the old Sea Knights, are all, huge targets.
Yep.
And Somalia proved that. I mean, in Somalia, they shot down 2 Blackhawks.
Yeah.
And with very little, I mean, small arms fire, and so just imagine what, I'm sorry.
It doesn't take much, and even the Afghans over there, they joke about the 53s look like a flying school bus. They're easy to hit.
Yeah, those Super Stallions, man, they're massive. So again, you got a big target.
Yep.
But the good news is that typically there's going to be a 50 cal.
Joey, that was his job. He was an aerial observer.
Yeah.
There were 350 cals on that helicopter.
Yeah.
So he definitely took care of business on 42 combat missions, and who knows how many other missions he took. Probably just as many. They're flying every day.
Oh yeah. They're they're professionals at what they do, man.
Yeah. They jump out of one, another crew, and crew chief and another pilot would jump in the same bird, take off again after refueling. That was pretty much the intense part of that war in 2012, 11, 11, and 12.
Yeah.
It was mostly 11, and then 12 was January when everything happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine how cool of a job Joey had. I mean, really flying in combat, all these missions, and you're really protecting those Marines and everybody on the ground by giving them the overhead support, by being that aerial, lookout, that aerial observer saying, hey, clicks here, clicks there, hit. All right, good to go. We're on to the next one. We're safe to come down in this hot zone.
Yeah.
Deliver what we need to deliver. I'm going to be your eyes in the sky until we get back out of here inside the wire.
Yeah, he called me one day from Afghanistan because he's always, hey, Dad, just guess what I did? It's like, all right, tell me, because it's going to be something crazy. He says, I got the greatest job in the world. I'm like, what is it? He says, I get to fly around in helicopters all day and all night, shoot big guns, and get paid for it. I'm like, just get your butt home.
That sounds like the Texan dream.
Yeah.
And that reminds me too, of the hog hunting in Texas. They're shooting these hogs at helicopters now. It's like,
if he come home, he probably would have did that. But he actually killed a wild hog in Hawaii at the north end of the Dole plantation with a spear. They invited a bunch of Marines up there to hog hunt, and they put them up in a perch up in a palm tree, and the local workers there would run through the jungle and scare the hogs. And Joey said, one come under my stand, and I gigged it like a frog, and it just rolled over dead. Then the guys picked it up and they dressed it, and they did a luau for the guys. That was like, that's the kind of stuff these guys did. I mean, they enjoyed life to the max. It was not a, this is just grunt work. And I mean, they're doing everything they could to have a good time,
Yeah. And of course, leave it to the East Texan to get them fed, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Especially when it came to a wild hog.
Yeah. So
he's like, I've seen this thing a few times before in my life.
Yeah.
All right. The 16,000-mile trip that you and Joey took, I want to hear about it. How did it play out? How did it start? Who thought it out? And really, I mean, were you guys on a timeline or a budget, or did you guys just go?
The only timeline we had is he had to be back by October to go to basic training, to get on the bus and go. But it all started when he cut his hand. He went through rehab, and it was going okay. And there's a chapter in the book called Joey Had Balls, which you can imagine Marines saying stuff like that. But it wasn't what it sounded like. It was 2 blue rubber balls that his nurse therapist gave him to squeeze to start making his hand work. And he had a crush on her. She was a beautiful girl. She had red hair and green eyes, and 28 years old, and Joey's 18. And he's holding hands with this woman. I mean, he's like, you could see him come out of therapy. He's like, all Google-eyed and crazy looking. And I talked to her. I says, he's got a crush on you. He says, I know. But we work with our patients intimately like that, so they get better. That part of their therapy. We talk to them. We're nice to them. We're telling them you can do a little bit more. And she says, I'm 28 and he's 18. It ain't gonna work. So we had a wink, wink, nod, nod every time I saw her and Joey come out of therapy. But it got to the point that that the doctor and the nurse there said that we can't do anymore. It's healed. It's up to him. He's got mobility in it, but it's not 100%. It never would be 100%. So I was fixing to retire, like I said earlier, and and I told the wife, I'm going fishing for the first year all over the country. I already planned it. I used to buy the fly fishing magazines, so I charted routes in places I wanted to go and highlighted them. I still got the magazines, thank goodness. And she looked at me and says, if you're going fishing, you're taking him with you. I'm like, yeah, no kidding, dear. And so I told him, go in there, get your fly rod and bring it back outside. Grab it in your bad hand and squeeze it and try to cast. Oh, he's whining. I can't. I said, do it. You're going to do it. And I don't care what you say to me. So he goes over there, 19-year-old, 18, 19-year-old, little whining little boy. And okay. So he's out in the backyard, flipping the fly rod. I said, okay, now go in the garage, go in storage and get all our camping gear. Everything that you could throw in this truck. I mean, everything. Fishing poles, camping gear, sleeping bags, everything. We loaded that truck up to the brim. And I said, we're going fishing. Okay. Where are we going? To Arkansas. I'm like, we'll start in Arkansas because we used to fish the White River every year with the kids and the family for trout up there because anybody can catch a trout up there. The state of Arkansas, I think, annually stocks 1 million fish in those rivers up there. So it's like you wiggle your finger, something's going to bite at it. So we started there, and that's where we started our trip from, Texas to Arkansas. You're right up the road on 59. You get into the Arkansas-Missouri border, and I don't even have to read the chapters here. This book is burned in my brain. It's amazing. And we were at the White River, just below Bull Shoals Dam, below the spillway, and there's just a lot of fish in there. I mean, and a lot of beautiful brown trout. That's what the picture portrays here, the brown trout that he caught. It was an epic morning. It was cool, nice. A fog had settled on the river, and it just, the fog mist just followed the stream like a ribbon all the way through the valley. And Joey was the first one to get going. He put his waders on. He got out there. And I was, sitting at the tent trying to get my stuff on. And I hear, fish on, I got one. It's a big one. I'm like, all right, I'll be there in a minute. So he says, get the net. And he's getting a little anxious and stuff. And he says, it's running down river and I can't turn it. I'm like, well, go with it. Start running down river with it. So and all I could see is part of a silhouette and a fly rod whipping around in the air through the fog and stuff. And I'm like, where are you at? And I'm like, I'm over here, So we're chasing each other down this riverbank. And it was like, and he finally started, he said, what do I do? I says, tighten your drag up a little bit and start getting some line back. And he started doing that. And eventually I quit. The fish got tired. And we slipped it in the net, and it was this beautiful 28-inch brown trout. And then I says, well, unhook them, take your picture, and turn them back. Let somebody else catch them. So we did that. And that was like just picturing that in your head, that battle with that fish and the scenery and the countryside and that, like I said, that fog and mist that just hugged the river all the way down for miles. It was just, I mean, that was the first place we started fishing. I mean, and it got better after that. And then we go to, we fished 9 states and 2 Canadian provinces. And he drove 16,000 miles round trip by the time we got back.
And how many months were you guys gone?
We left in June and we got back in October, just in time for him to go to basic training.
Wow.
And my dear wife, to this day, will not tell me how much money we spent, because I had cash on me, but then she put money on my ATM, my Pulse card. And she said, you don't want to know how much you guys spent with, gas and food and fishing licenses and running all over the United States. It was a ball. And each chapter, the book is a lot of that fishing and stuff and places we went, and stuff we saw. And that's, I think, by the time we got up to Montana-Idaho border, we had crossed into British Columbia, fished up there. Then we went over to Saskatchewan and fished the Old Man River, which is just a gorgeous river full of bull trout and brook trout and every kind of trout you could imagine. Then somehow we came back through BC into Montana and fished Montana for quite a while. And that's when he fell in love with Montana. And I think that's why I told you earlier he wanted to build cabins in the mountains of Montana for his Marine Corps buddies to come back and visit. And if you read the fishing trips, you're like, oh, you guys really did that? I says, yeah. We slept in tents. Every once in a while, we'd sit in the truck. I says, man, who smells worse, you or me? So we'd have to get a motel and take a shower because we couldn't stand each other. And we camped most of the time, cooked out, and, ate some fish and released most of them, and just had a blast.
What were the moments like, father and son, once the sun went down and that campfire was lit? What type of bond did you guys have around the campfire?
Oh, we prepared a meal. We enjoyed, cooking together, and it's a learning experience for him because he had never done nothing like that. Few small, short trips, but we were out there roughing it, and she had to set up the tent, get everything ready, and I made him do a lot of his stuff. I'm like, hey, do it, and we sit around and we talk about the day, the fish, the trip, where we're going next, and it was a bonding experience very few people have with their kids, and that's why I urge anybody who has kids to do as much as you can with them anytime you can. It doesn't have to be an epic fishing trip, but spend some time with them. Find something they enjoy and you enjoy, or you both enjoy. And then you'll be able to, have memories, because you never know. We're never promised anything when we enter this earth and when we leave it. It's a short time we're here, So you need to do it. And there's so many parents that are workaholics. They don't have time for their kids, and sooner or later, the kids are grown, they're gone. And they got kids. So the cycle continues, So you gotta, and we had 5 kids. So each kid did something different. He was the only outdoorsman. The other ones had all kinds of different hobbies. My oldest son there, his IQ's off the chart, and we have conversations. I said, please come down to my level or below, so I know what you're talking about. And he's in the high-tech weaponry missile stuff in the Navy on a destroyer. So, and Andy, his sister, Joey talked to Andy into going to Marine Corps on recruiter's assistant so he could make another stripe. You know how the Marines get. I'll talk anybody to go in a course so I can get another stripe. So Andy went in and she got an intel spot. So she was, doing top secret stuff. And towards the end of her 6 years, she was flying drones somewhere, But she had I call the vacation spots: Hawaii, Korea, Japan, back to Hawaii, and Joey's in Afghanistan fighting, So. And then Tommy was in the Navy all that time. He's deployed there in the Gulf Wars on his battleship and stuff over there. And they're fighting over there too. So
incredible.
Kids, really busy kids, so.
Looks like you and Debbie did a great job with your family.
We hope so. But you don't find out until later in life and see what they turn into and how they mature, and that's the important part of this.
You've described some stand-up folks there, in your children and your sons and your daughter.
Yeah, it's you look back and like, wow, we really did that, and these kids made it, and it's crazy because all the people in our military history, none of them ever got wounded, nobody ever got killed, and Joey's the first one. He's the first kid to get killed, and just his medals in the wars, he had the combat air wings, which is a lot of Purple Heart, and the state of Hawaii honored him with their Hawaiian Medal of Honor, which is just a beautiful medal, and all the Middle Eastern, medals and ribbons and deployments and stuff like that. So he had a stack, he had a cake started already, and you know what that is, and he was proud of it too, and. Yeah,
those pictures right there, the picture of Joey and his boot camp.
Yep, just blues. Yeah.
Picture right there. All these Marines, they look the same when we get out of boot camp. Got that big square jaw, that big neck, leather neck, eyes wide open, and you could just see the warrior spirit in that young man. Good looking young man there, Marine. And again, it's just, there's something special about the Marine Corps bond, the brotherhood, the sisterhood. And it's a special branch of service designated for the special folks that join, the few, the proud, the Marines. And I know, look, you are a proud father. Yeah. And you went on this once in a lifetime journey with your son, Joey, at the right time. of both of your lives. And you were able to capture a lot of these moments, and you've written about it. You are now the author of Fishing with Joey, the book that is right there.
Yeah.
In an incredible read. You can get this book on Amazon, folks, or really anywhere books are sold online. Go check it out. Fishing with Joey. Now, tell me a little bit about the book and how it all came to be. And I mean, we know the inspiration behind it is to have that memoir and that memory of your son Joey, and really explain in detail what just exactly this 16,000-mile journey, what 7 states, 2 provinces in Canada really led to.
United States, 9 states.
9,
more, Well, the journaling started the day he passed. I got these, notepads, and I just almost call it remote writing, because I don't know I was doing this. It was just coming from somewhere else. For as far as I'm concerned, it's hard to explain. I don't know if you've ever been in that situation, but all of a sudden, a pencil hit paper, and it started going. And every day, something else got written down. Every thought I had, I wrote it down. I was even writing on the plane from Texas to Dover for the dignified transfer, and I was journaling there and just documenting stuff. And a lot of that comes back from when I worked on the police department. I worked a lot of the investigative division. So all I did is wrote reports, read reports, talked to complainants, talked to suspects, and it was like ingrained in me. But this was different. This was special. There was like a push or a guiding force telling me, you need to do this. Because I've seen so many people with unbelievable, fabulous stories, and nobody ever knew about them. It passed when they passed. And I said, something told me, you need to do something for this kid. And all the Marines, just like you go to Arlington, you know how many graves are there now? Over 400,000. So there's 400,000 stories there. And you're not even talking about all the national cemeteries all over the country. So, I mean, it's just some heroes, some great people. And it just started compiling. And a friend of mine, Corey, he's here, a next door neighbor. He's been coming over and talking to me, and he's not an adopted kid. I hate to say it, but and he's like a year younger than Joey, I think. And he's got the same interest I do. And we're talking about the book, and I just had milk crates full of notes and journals and pages. I mean, 2 milk crates full of everything, and all the stuff that had come back with Joe, and all the news reports and all the articles and stuff. So I had a library already sitting there, and he says, well, I grew up next to Joey. I'll help you edit this book. So Corey took it, and he went through it and cleaned it up. And then I ended up meeting Teresa on just a strange experience. One of my neighbors down the street was knocking on my door about 10 o'clock in the morning. He said, Tom, is that your dog running down the street? Because I got a German Shepherd service dog. I said, no, Broly's up in the office looking out the window at us. That's his name, Broly. And I said, well, I thought it was your dog. I just want to let you know, go catch him and stuff. I'm like, okay. So we just started talking about the neighborhood and what's going on. And then we got into, whatever else in politics, and it shifted over to religion. And he's a pretty spiritual guy, put it that way. And he wrote a book about the book of Revelations. He did his interpretation. So he hands me the book. I'm like, okay, I'll read it. And I said, you wouldn't believe, I've been trying to get this book written and published for the last 12, 13 years. He says, I got just the person. And he dials Teresa's name, Teresa Granberry. Here, talk to her. Tell her what you got. So she says, I'll look at it. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Just because my dog wasn't lost, but he thought he was lost, running down the street. And I talked to her, and I sent her the first chapter, which is called The Trail of Ashes. And she read it, and she looked at it, and she called me up. She says, I'll take this book. I said, you got to be kidding me. And when I talked to her, she had already had 5 or 6 books on the bestseller list. So I'm like, boy, this might be the miracle I'm looking for. So it took her, almost a year to get the book done, because I'd send her stuff, and then she'd send me the proofs back and forth. You know how it works to do a book. And then she sent me the author's copy to read, and I read through it and made more corrections. And one day, boom, she says, the book's done. It's live. It's on Amazon. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And from there, it's just it's word of mouth and a few people I contact, like you and the circle of people and it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm going to send a couple copies of the books to 2 different places, like the TAPS organization out of Virginia that strictly deals with pretty much Gold Star families. And I've already talked to the lady that heads it up. She just send it. I want to read it. And I sent a book to the museum here. And there's another memorial site in Conroe that has all the fallen heroes from Montgomery County, which we live in. And Joey's the last name on the list. And hopefully there's no more after him. So they got the book. So it's just sort of trickling out. And it's going fast. I'm talking to you. I did an audio interview with Rob Harmon. He's a colonel. I don't know if you know Rob. You probably know him.
I do. Yes.
Yeah, he did one a couple weeks ago for me for the Honor Cafe, and Chris wants to do a fundraiser down there for us. And I got a radio interview coming up in March next month, and something else coming up. And these people are calling, hey, we want you to come out here. We want you to tell your story, because it's a story that so many people I think would help, especially people that lost loved ones. I don't care how they passed.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's spending time with your family. It's spending time with your loved ones. It's spending time with those that you cherish most in life, and going out and living, and actually living, not on your phone and everything else like that, and working all these endless hours, and being always just at wit's end and irritable. I mean, go out and literally live.
You never know.
And so that's amazing right there, that you were able to to compile such great information in a book to continue the legacy of your son, Joey. Now, I want you to take our audience through a little bit of the book. Now, you don't need to get really in depth. Chapter 1, right? You say Trail of Ashes.
Trail of Ashes. Yeah, it's a pretty intense part of the book, and Teresa decided to put that as the first chapter because it really hits home and hits hard on what happens when a service member gets killed in a war. And the first place that we started with the Trail of Ashes was in Afghanistan, because there was a helicopter crash and it burnt on the ground. So there will always be some ashes or parts of our 6 Marines out there in the soil of Afghanistan. That's just a fact. You can't change that. And the recovery. Matter of fact, I was contacted by the sergeants that was the first one on the ground. Troy Hayes. He's an awesome guy. He was a Army medic dust off, and he was the first one on the ground that night. And he walked up to Joey and wished him a safe flight to heaven. And he said a prayer. Yeah. And I've been in contact with him for the last 13 years. It's just a super guy. And I'm gonna write the second book called The War Room, My Office. And that's going to entail a lot more of this stuff that guys like Troy and all the stuff that's accumulated up here over the years, and it still keeps coming. I mean, I'm getting stuff from people all the time. I've got more pictures and more paintings and more military stuff. It's unreal, So that's where it started. And I talked to Adam Sanders. He was a sergeant in the recovery team the next morning, and that whole recovery team and everybody on the ground were awarded combat action ribbons. So you know what that means?
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah. They're in a firefight with the enemy trying to recover our Marines. And Adam got hurt. He never told me how, but he got medically retired. So in a firefight, what happens. You're going to get dinged probably. And I've talked to him at length, and I want him to come up to Montana. And he is in one of the smallest career fields in the Marine Corps that nobody knows about. It's pretty much their mortuary unit. They go out and recover the fallen heroes. And I could not imagine that, in any war, but it's always been there. And he's suffered a lot from it. He's got a lot just the memories of pictures in his head all the time. And super nice guy. He's in Georgia now. He's actually working a government job somewhere, getting a paycheck. He's, working through it. And I talked to him for 3 hours on the phone one day. And we talked absolutely nothing about the crash, just life in general. It was awesome to talk to this guy. Great young man. You know, so that's where the first ashes started. And then it was a total of 6 places. And there was 6 Marines killed. There's 6 props on a helicopter. All these 6s and 2s just keep hitting. If I went to Vegas, I probably made some money on all this stuff, you know, because the numbers just keep hitting. You know, Joey was 22, and there's always these 2s and 6s just coming. It's like numerology. I mean, something about it is real. I don't know what it is, but it's there all the time if you see it. And I've been privy to see a lot of things most people don't see. I think there's a little veil that's split once in a while, and certain individuals can see these things and feel these things, and they're intense. There's something else, and you know,
very spiritual.
Yeah.
You have done a tremendous job in keeping your son's memory alive and his legacy very much alive, not only here in the greater Montgomery County, Houston area, but really from sea to shining sea, with this beautiful memoir that you've written in his memory, Fishing with Joey. But additionally, what you're doing in Montana to help our nation's heroes in Joey's name. Can you explain exactly what's going on in Montana and how our listeners can help you?
Yeah, it was another amazing journey with my wife, Debbie. She wanted me to go ahead and show her all the places that Joey and I fished. I says, well, we can't do it. You know, it's like more 16,000 miles, honey. I am not driving 16,000 miles with you in the car, because she gives driving instructions, you know. So you know what that means. So we went to a lot of places we went, and it was pretty much her idea and her mission to find a place for Joey's final resting place and honor his dream. I want cabin. He wanted a cabin in the mountains, but 6 Marines went down, so it turned into 6 cabins. So each cabin is named after each Marine that went down with Joe. So we started building them, and it's pretty much her and me and a few volunteers and some helpers. And I know how to pound nails and make buildings myself. So, you know, I do a lot of different things, but when you're doing that kind of work, there's a reason for it. You love doing it. And so we went on this trip, and we drove all over Montana. We had a couple of realtors help us, and we finally found a realtor in Missoula, Montana. And Mark Twite is his name, great guy. And he says, I got 3 properties, and you're going to buy one of them. I'm like, yeah, I've heard this before. I'm like, sure. So we went and saw the first 2, and they were 12 miles up on mountain roads in the middle of nowhere, and no maintenance and stuff. Like, no, that's not going to work. So we left there, and we headed farther west to Mineral County in the little town of Superior. And there was 165 acres sitting up on a mountainside, 4 miles up on a mountain dirt road from the hard road. And I'm like, okay, let's go up there and see this place. And we're driving a Toyota Corolla. So you can imagine driving a Toyota Corolla on a mountain road. It was like, she's just squealing, get away from the edge. We're going to crash. What if we break down?
With Texas plates.
Yeah, that's exactly. Nobody's going to help you, you know. And so it's like this two dummies from Texas sightseeing pretty much. We knew what we were doing.
Don't feed the bears. Yeah,
really. We got grizzly bears and black bears up there, and wolves and mountain lions. So you got to keep your head on a swivel if you're out there, and you better carry a gun. That's a for sure. But so we got up there, and it was like magic. It was in the evening, and the sun was setting, and the rays of the sun were coming through the trees, and I'm like, it was like twinkle time. And we parked the car, we walked around the property, and she said, "This is it." And I said, "Yeah, it is." And it was unbelievable. And we called the realtor. I says, "Hey, here's our earnest money. Make the contract. Let's do it." And we didn't even know anything about the area. We just like blindly went up there and like, this is it. We're going to do it here. And it's 164, 165 acres, completely surrounded by Lolo National Forest, which is 3,150 square miles of wilderness. So you got this little diamond dropped right in the middle of that wilderness.
Wow.
And there's only
diamond in the rough.
Yeah, there's only one road in and one road out, and I control the road. And I've got neighbors down below that have 2 lock gates too. So if you're not invited, you're not getting in there, you know. So
unless you got a Corolla, right?
Yeah, unless you got a Corolla. I got 2 4-wheel drive trucks up there now, but yeah.
when you were there, I mean, it just felt right. You knew immediately, and some things were happening around you, with the sun, the sunset. Did you feel did you feel solace at that time knowing that Joey was looking down on you? And
Yeah.
did you feel his presence?
Oh yeah, he's still with me. I mean, he's the old Marine saying, "Don't be a girl," and then so other words that I can't repeat on this podcast, but you know what I'm talking about. And suck it up, Dad. And yeah, it was, and the whole thing was really ironic or epic about it. That last mission there, that last deployment, was the Red Lions sundown mission, which means they're going to decommission the 53s, go to Ospreys, and go to the 53 Kings. So all that old machinery is going to go bye-bye. And he was not happy about that because he said, I don't want to fly in an Osprey. I want to be in a 53. So as the sun's setting, and I'm thinking about the sundown mission, I'm like, this is it. And we went up another, and there's 6 roads on this property. So
wow.
each road is named after each Marine.
Right.
And each cabin is on that road. So
the 6s and the 2s, they just keep coming out of everywhere.
We had no idea there were 6 roads on this property. They're old log and skidder roads, but they're drivable. And our cabin is up on the top, away from the other ones down below. And ironically, our cabin is at 4,000 feet, and that's the distance they fell from the sky that night. I mean, this stuff does not quit. And it's just, and I'm just scratching the surface on it. We had 4 or 5 hours. We can go on forever talking about this, but it's just, you just sit there and like, you're mesmerized. You're shaking your head. You're like, is this for real? Am I seeing this? So we end up going up to another road, which is Logan Lane. We named each road after each of the Marines. They got their own road, their own cabin. And we went to this one spot. We get up there, and there's a little clearing, and it's looking up this great big canyon. And the sun is setting, and the sun is shining pretty on the exact spot we're going to put his gravestone and some of his ashes. Yeah. So I mean, that's
when things align like this, there is no coincidence.
No, I don't believe it. I mean, it's a God-given gift, and it's something we have to do something with. You can't ignore these things. And
you can't.
I tell these stories all day long to people, and they're like, "Wow," and it's believable or not believable. But there's stuff in this room that's different. It's just different. Some things have happened, and that's why I want to go through this room, because some of the stuff on the walls and some of the pictures and some of the gifts and some of the stuff that came back from his personal property from Hawaii and Afghanistan are in here. He's got his Marine Corps saber. He's an NCO, and all the stuff that he's actually touched, he has hands on. His uniforms. As a matter of fact, we had a quilt made out of his combat uniforms, because these ladies, the Tomball Quilting Association, called us one day shortly after he passed, and we want to do a quilt for your son Joey. I'm like, okay. And the lady asked me, Judy Aswater is her name. She says, what kind of material you want? I said, here's the phone. Give it to Debbie. You all figure it out. She says, Debbie said, I'll call you back in a couple of days. She says, why don't we use all his combat uniforms? They've been sanitized. You know how stuff comes back. It's all clean and washed and everything's good. So we got a bunch of his, his fatigues, the brown camo, and they had the flight suits, the jumpsuits and stuff and everything else. And we took them over to Judy, and she says, wow. And she told us the hardest thing we had to do is cut these uniforms up, knowing who wore them and where they came from, to build this quilt. And, you start crying. I'm doing good today. I'm a couple of tears have fell, but they're little ones. But, and it took them almost 7-8 months to do the quilt. And the kicker is that Joe used to wear this T-shirt. It says, some people go a whole lifetime not making a difference, but Marines don't have that problem. It's Ronald Reagan's quote. You probably heard it and seen it.
Oh yeah.
That's the center of the quilt. And I was like, wow. And they gave us that quilt. And this is sort of different. I don't know if you believe it or not, but I put the quilt on his bed up in his room, and I slept under it one night, first night. And I got up early morning, had to use the restroom. It was cracking gray daylight, and there's an apparition of Joey standing there in dress blues. And I've talked to other people that have seen loved ones that have passed away like this, so I'm not crazy, I hope. And I said, hey man, what's going on? They just faded away. I'm like, and that's one of the first really wow that hit me. And then 2 days later, I wake up, sleeping under the quilt, the same thing. And clear as a bell, I hear his voice. Hey, Dad. His voice. I mean, I wasn't watching TV. It wasn't nothing going on. It wasn't me talking to myself. And all I could think of is his essence, his spirit, his soul was there telling me, hey, what a cool quilt you got. I'm okay.
You gave me goosebumps. Sincerely.
It's crazy. And even one of the other mothers, I won't mention her name and stuff, but her son went down with Joe. And she called me all excited because I've been telling her all these things that have been happening with me. And she says, I had a dream. I said, okay, tell me about it. He says, my son came to me in a dream, but he was a grown man, but he used to come in our bedroom at night. Mom, Dad, kids, they come in and they're eyeballing you and stuff and they scare you. So he'd come in as a grown man. And the first thing he says, Mom, I'm sorry. And he says, because they did not want him to go in the Marine Corps because his grandfather was a Marine. So, he's a grumpy old Marine. He was still alive. And he says, I'm sorry. I'm okay. And we're all together. So he's telling him he's okay. And his other Marines are all together, guarding the gates of heaven. You know how they do it. They're partying in heaven, And she was so elated because of that dream, because that's the first and only contact she ever had after Kevin passed. And dreams are pretty intense. I don't know if you've had them. I guarantee you probably have. Everybody has. And you wake up, am I awake or am I sleeping? Is this real or is that real? But
incredible. This is absolutely incredible. And I'm sure all of these, short stories that you've told us today are probably all in the book with, with additional information and,
so much,
how it all played out. And, the sheer magnificence of it, and the sheer beauty of it and the message, that is relayed in the book, is one that needs to be taken seriously, and I think that is, enjoy the time that we have here on the planet with your loved ones and do the things that make you feel alive, by doing the things that make you feel alive. You're going to be building memories and lasting legacies for generations to come. I can just hear these stories coming out 40, 50 years from now about that trip that you were on, about that very book that you wrote. It could be sitting in Honor Cafe in their library, and somebody could come by and say, I know Joey. So there's just, Tom, thank you so much for coming on the show today and talking with us and talking with me and our audience. And from the bottom of my heart, I'm sincerely and deeply sorry about what happened with Joey, and I do offer my sincerest condolences and respects to you and your wife Debbie and your family, and I hope one day that pain can and I think you're. And I think you're already in a good spot. I know you've been going through a lot of treatment and speaking in open groups with other folks. And, just to kind of, it's, I can't imagine. I really can't imagine what you've gone through.
And my hope is that this book touches a lot of hearts and souls and other people that experience stuff like this. And they can say to themselves, it's okay. Their loved one's okay. Because that's the most important part of it. I think that's the reason I got pushed by some force that you can't explain that made me journal this much. I've got four of these journal books filled with this room up here already. And Corey said he's going to do the next one.
Well, it's definitely touched my heart today. I can tell you that right now. So,
well, it's good to know. Thanks for the privilege and honor talking to you and being able to get this out there, because I think it'll help a lot of people.
Yes, sir. We will most definitely do that. And, again, the honor is all mine, sir. And we thank you so much for joining us today on the show. And I can't wait to get this out, and we will link your book and hopefully get it out to the masses, because it's definitely a memoir that is very, very worthy. And very well deserving of not only being purchased, but read and followed through on with the message that you have relayed in this book, with that one-on-one time your son Joey prior to his death in the United States Marine Corps, serving our great nation. So Tom Logan, Gold Star father, folks, go out and get his book today. He is the author of Fishing with Joey. You can get it on Amazon or anywhere books are sold online, folks. That is Fishing with Joey. Tom Logan, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Semper Fi, man. Take care.
Hoorah, Semper Fi.
Yep.
Well, folks, there you have it. The great Tom Logan. What an honorable man, a strong man, a man of faith, a man of courage, a man of inspiration. Everything that we talk about on this show is what he is. I mean, he is a beacon of hope. He's a shining example to everybody out there, especially being a leader in the Gold Star families, really from sea to shining sea. To have a man that has been through so much already, being a police officer for 28 years. I mean, this man's gone through a lot of things that folks won't see in 5 or 6 or 7, even 7 lifetimes. You know, calloused, hardened, but having gone through losing a child, his son in combat, being a US Marine in his helicopter going down in 2012. Tom Logan and his wife, Debbie, and their other 4 children have been picking up the pieces ever since. But folks, let me tell you, it doesn't end. It doesn't end in this sad story. The journey is just now beginning, and it's beginning right now in the mountains of Montana, honoring the 6 men that went down and the 6 roads that will lead you to those cabins in Montana, where other veterans that are going through life issues in hardships can go there to disconnect, to learn how to live again after battling severe trauma due to combat-related conditions for serving our country.
This is the Today with Tally podcast.